We were talking about this as an executive branch decision on tariffs, and they get to implement or not. But it doesn't sound like it can be just at the whim, right? So you had mentioned IEPA, which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is something that the president has to invoke and some logical reason related to that act. Tell me what he did in order to bring tariffs front and center again using IEPA.
President can regulate a variety of international economic transactions, including tariffs, including imports, by invoking the IEPA Act. And in the Federal Register, which is a government publication where these executive orders all have to be published because it has to be public information for the world to go and see, back on March 3rd, the president invoked IEPA and said the emergency that he is addressing through at least the increase of the tariffs on China and Mexico, and he'll expand that to the world, is to address the rapid increase of synthetic opioid supply chain. So he says drugs are the problem. I'll narrow it down and make it simple. And we're going to stop the import of drugs by raising the price of them. And we're going to make all these countries come to their knees. And this isn't a political statement. This is just how things are being handled here. And under IEPA, I have the authority to do this. And then I'll be able to talk to all the countries about how they're going to keep opioids out of this country.
And yet that still is a 250% tariff on milk or dairy products, not milk, out of Canada. There's 50% on lumber. How does that curb opioid flow?
Well, what's fascinating really, Chris, and on the various tariff councils that I sit on to represent the EDPA, people in major industries talk about invoking legal challenges based on IEPA and saying that the president has usurped his authority by going here and doing that. Well, a lot of industries are also scared to do that because they don't know what retaliation will come from government as a result of that. And that's where all the balancing is taking place now. And there are some 1,000-pound gorillas on this group, from the aluminum can industry, for all of our beer, soda, et cetera, to the National Retail Federation, to a myriad of the automobile industry representatives, and little lowly EDPA, right?
Yeah.
In comparison to some of these. Maybe disheartening is the better word, to see that people don't even want to fight this because of the fear of retaliation.
Can I ask you, Rob, if an association like ours, or maybe a larger association, files a lawsuit to stop it, does it stop once the lawsuit's filed until there's a ruling, or does there have to be a judgment and a ruling to actually stop it?
So there would have to be a judgment and a ruling. So one of two things happens. Either you seek a preliminary injunction to stop the enforcement of the IEPA tariff that's being suggested, which you have to show irreparable harm to get that issued by a court. Or you have to wait till the final ruling on the case. And the problem that we're seeing right now in the court system is that judges are ruling along the lines of their appointments. So if they were appointed by a liberal-sided Democrat, they're ruling one way on an issue. Then the issue gets appealed to a higher court where there's a more conservative judge who hears the case, who rules in the other direction. Ultimately, this continues until you get to the Supreme Court, which is heavily weighted to the Republican side. And I hate to say politics is coming into significant play in our judicial system.
Yes,
but it is.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I want to try and stay on point. This is a fascinating discussion, and there's a lot of ways we could take this, but I want to catch up on a couple of interesting points and stay on point as it relates to our industry. I just did the math So the lumber, which could have been potentially an alternative path to build exhibits, back to more affordably of what it may be turning into. But the tariff, if I just did a 40%, not 50, the average single family home, you would be looking at between $7,500 and $10,000 in additional lumber costs.
Unless, Chris, the builder was able to procure U.S. produced lumber only. And the current administration's argument is that they're going to open up forestry and,
That's right.
the harvesting of trees and lumber.
Well,
So
it's funny.
there'll be plenty supply.
When we looked historically back, in the 19th century of tariffs as this country was being built, agriculture and farming were two of the industries that were most benefiting from those types of things. So I get that. So I had it.
This time, though, the difference this time, Chris, is that on the agricultural side, those exporting goods are being hit with huge tariffs going the other way now as well.
Yeah.